The Power of Light, Red Light Therapy and the Universe with Bjørn Ekeberg. Ready to explore the cutting edge of science and wellness? Join the Wellness Driven Life Show as we welcome Bjørn Ekeberg, Managing Director of Recharge Health Oslo and expert in cosmology. Bjørn will discuss the groundbreaking FlexBeam technology, a NASA-developed red light therapy device that you can use at home. Plus, he'll share his insights on the limits of scientific knowledge and our understanding of the universe. Don't miss this fascinating conversation. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness-driven ride. Welcome to the show. Let me tell a little bit about our guest that we have here today. Bjørn has a PhD in philosophy of science and has written on physics and cosmology. Still, his career path led him instead to build a business based on paradigm-changing NASA-developed technology. A former screenwriter for NRK and Netflix shows, Bjørn created the brand for Recharge and has led the company since 2023. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Bjørn Ekeberg. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, April.
It's an absolute pleasure. This is going to be a great conversation. You know so much. It's incredible. So I'm excited to share you with our audience. Let's get started by having you share a little bit more about yourself so they can get to know you.
You touched on it briefly introduction-wise. I've had a sort of a circuitous path, having worn many hats on my head until I ended up in this position. But I basically did in-depth studying, and I was afforded the possibility to look really into the depths of how we understand the universe in terms of physics, cosmology, from a philosophical point of view. I did a lot of studies and wrote a book on philosophy of science, which is really about determining what's scientific and what's not, and the limits. And this kind of question has always fascinated me. It's like, what do we know for sure? What is it that we add with our own thoughts and projections? Where is the difference between believing and knowing? These kinds of questions I've always had an interest in. And about 6 years ago, I happened to become my co-founders, and I started a business upon discovering a very concrete case of a kind of light. We call it now red light therapy as a term for red and near infrared light, and we can talk more in detail about that. But we had come across, or my co-founders had come across, this technology that stimulates the human physiology to basically repair itself faster. So it is a way to improve recovery through these particular wavelengths of light. And we were struck by it, and I joined in the team to see if we could develop our own innovation within that space and try to bring this home to people, because it's something that everybody could benefit from. So it's quite a leap from the more theoretical side and a broader understanding of science and how science works into actually a very concrete scientific case of turning into practice and bringing it into everybody's home. So that's a brief introduction.
Yeah, and I would think that it'd be a lot more simpler to be able to go that route, that scientific route, other than, trying to show people and disclaim things maybe that we've had for so long, thoughts on, universal aspects and cosmology. But, something that I'm very curious about, I have a couple of things that I'm curious about already. But that red light therapy, when you talk about it, those waves that are healing light, we have grounding. We've interviewed Clint Ober on the show. And so he has, developed products to help bring that healing aspect from the earth. And so when we talk about light waves and frequencies and all of those different patterns, we know that there are ones that are healing and good for us and ones that are not good for us, right? And they are destructive. So if you don't mind diving a little deeper into your knowledge of all that.
Sure. It all comes from the source of energy for everything in our part of the universe that we tend to take for granted, that we all know, and it's the sun, right? It's like we are all orbiting, we're inside of this little sheltered, fragile, but still very beautiful little bubble in this perfect place orbiting, in which we have the world as we know it. All of our energy, and I mean literally all the energy that powers everything that we do, comes from the sun, right? We tend to think of energy through food, for example. It's very obvious. We eat certain things, convert that into energy in our bodies and so on. But all the energy for the food that we eat, for everything that we do, all comes from the sun, right? This is a complete spectrum. You can call it the electromagnetic spectrum, as you'd say in physics, and it covers a whole range of invisible rays that we don't know, or like that we can't see, like X-rays and gamma rays and these kinds of things, over through a visible spectrum of light, which is the red, green, blue, this sort of little narrow spectrum that we see as colors, and a whole range of invisible light that's more in the infrared range. So there's a whole lot of it's a very broad spectrum that we get through sunlight and just exposure to sunlight. And you're right, there are like big variations, it turns out, between how certain wavelengths affect us and not. So we know from sun exposure, for example, most people are familiar with the harmful effects that could come from the sun in terms of UVA, like certain parts of the UV ultraviolet spectrum that can be, under certain conditions, can be damaging. But there's a whole range of different wavelengths that stimulate us in different ways. And perhaps the most profound discovery on this total spectrum is what happens in the so-called near infrared range, which is just off the visible spectrum. It is sort of invisible, but it's where the red kind of bleeds into a dark red. And infrared generally is related to heat, the processes of heat. So we can feel infrared, but we often can't see it, right? So that warming effect when you look at a sunrise or a sunset, the glow you feel on your skin kind of comes from the infrared. And you see that color the sun has at that moment also blends into the red and crosses into the near infrared. Now, it turns out through a lot of studies, and NASA has done its own research on this, and it's well established for decades, that light in this bandwidth has potential to stimulate the cells in the body to basically heal faster. Your mitochondria in your cells, like the organelles that are responsible for energy production, they respond to this light. If you have the right dosage and output, they are stimulated and they produce more energy. And this is, an amazing discovery. Where we are now is leading toward actual applications that we can use and have in people's homes, that people can use themselves. That hasn't been available before, but basically harnessing this discovery and making it accessible to people. So you can literally stimulate the cells in your body to be more efficient and do better what your body does best, which is to repair itself and to recover, right? So it's energy you find in this natural spectrum, but kind of concentrated into a device, right? Into a kind of an advanced light therapy device or a lamp that then enables this process in the body. And that to me was a very concrete discovery within this broad range of all of the cosmic context that we're in, which fascinated me. And so I wanted to be part of that and develop that further, because I think this is something that everybody can benefit from. And we started out the company with the vision that one day this is going to be in everybody's home. Like, it's a no-brainer to have something like this available. If you can make it available for people.
1,000%, even more so in this day and age, because we're living so in the rat race, right? You know, we're go, go, go. Most of us do not consider the rest and recharge and take it, seriously, even though it is literally vital to our well-being. I mean, even though you're not, have a dis-ease at this moment, it will start to show up later on because you're not doing enough of that recharge and healing aspect. And it's interesting, when we go back to those sun rays, that it's so contradictory when people think that, oh, I'm going to get harmed by the sun, and so I shouldn't go out at all. But I feel deeply that one of the best things that we can do is make sure that we're outside every single day. And outside of, you talked about nutrition, like when we talk about what are some of the most important things that we can do, I would consider that.
Absolutely. And I think it's the most overlooked and the biggest variable affecting our health. We tend to take it for granted because it's always there. Maybe days it's cloudy and it's not, but the sun is there and it rises every morning. But you literally, if you don't get enough sun exposure, you will die. It's not just that you can stay in a cave for a couple of weeks and be fine as long as you have food. Your body needs light as much as plants do. We don't have the same photosynthesis in our body that plants have in the exact same way, but it's a very similar principle. This is something that for us who started, it was mind-blowing to me when I first sort of realized it, and then it becomes such a banal insight. I mean, it's so simple, right? Of course, it's like the sun.
Yeah.
The sun is there and it has this effect, but we've tended not to really think about it as an important aspect of our well-being. Other than that, maybe it feels nice. It's nice to be outdoors and it's nice to have that, but it has an energy effect on your whole being.
Yeah, absolutely. And, isn't that something that we were literally given everything that we need to thrive? And it's free to everyone. And we just simply forget that, just again, being in that rat race, the day in, the day out, all of the things, the monkey brain. And so I think that is so cool that you are bringing that aspect to us and to be in every single home, because this is a time that we really are looking for things to make it easier for us, because we can't always just change our lifestyle so simply, right? We maybe sometimes need something easier and easier access to be able to rejuvenate.
Yeah, indeed. And so, I can show you here briefly our first device that we created or innovated. It's called FlexBeam, and it is a wearable red light therapy device. And we distinguish ourselves from others in this space that, based on our research and understanding of the science of how this works, it is even more effective to do this kind of treatment if you can do it straight on the skin. So we just developed something that you can literally wear straight on the skin wherever your sort of targeted issue might be, or where you might have pain, or somewhere that you need to loosen up a little bit or reduce inflammation. I'll show you. These are the lights as they're running. This is a combination of red and near infrared light, right? Similar wavelengths you may find in other sort of stationary application like wall panels or lamps. But by being able to put it straight on the skin without it being hot, you also get a very effective treatment. And the reason, or the physiological explanation that's really important to understand about this, about near infrared and red light therapy, is that it penetrates, its ability to penetrate the skin. So you can, if you have a powerful light like this one is, and you put it straight on the skin, you can penetrate several inches in and actually stimulate tissue underneath the skin. Right, so you can actually get into muscles and joints and ligaments, like anything under the skin, and directly stimulate it to produce more energy in that area. So that's why that was a key focus for us in all the innovation that we do, and this focused on being able to make this very accessible and easy to use for people, is focusing on how to make it so sort of intimate and tactile, and that you can wear it straight on you, because that is far as we can see, the best kind of application, the most effective one.
We're going to move into our first commercial. And Bjørn, when we get back, I would love to know and have an understanding for our audience of why something like this is important for astronauts, why NASA began with this. So stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone, here with the incredible Bjørn. Now, we talked a lot about red light therapy and the fact that it stemmed initially from NASA. Can you tell us why it was such an important aspect for that?
I think NASA was an important part of opening to commercial application, because a lot of the research was already there. For decades, there were studies that showed that lasers at a certain wavelength had a certain kind of effect on the body. And I think what NASA in the early 2000s, they were looking to solve a concrete problem they had with astronauts in space. If they were to get injured or get a cut, something like this, they heal incredibly slow in space. From what we understand, lack of oxygen and all the different conditions when you're in that kind of state or in the bubble meant that this is a huge liability, and they were looking for ways to accelerate that healing. And that's when they turned to some of the existing research and started researching themselves and developing prototypes to prove and to show that in practice you could accelerate the healing response in the body. And I think this work in the early 2000s and into about 2010 really set the stage for the potential for commercial applications. And since then, we've also had some really big innovations in LED technology, which we rely a lot on, like compression of power into bulbs that makes it possible to create a device now that we created that you couldn't have made 10 years ago without it being extremely expensive. So, I mean, NASA is an important part of making it more open and accessible. And I think we are going to see more interesting applications of this in practice in coming years.
Oh, well, I just love all of the things that you're doing. Again, bringing this to everybody's homes, this very simple application that people can do. Now, is it something that you would recommend on a daily aspect or just where there are certain pain points in the body?
It is generally something you can benefit from health-wise from doing it daily or more or less daily. But of course, it depends on what you would like to treat, all right? So in some cases, it's obvious that you have, like if you have a certain kind of injury or a pulled muscle or anything musculoskeletal related that is a kind of a block or has inflammation, then I think any listener would intuitively think, okay, I should try it on that. And it's that simple that you just basically put it where it hurts or where your target issue is. And it will help, generally speaking, because each case is different and it covers, you know, some cases are complex, but generally speaking, it will accelerate that recovery by a considerable margin. For a pulled muscle, for example, we have physios we work with that stipulate 30 to 40% faster recovery time, right, from using this compared to just doing nothing. So it's not a small margin that you can improve. It is considerable. But then there are all these cases for people who might say, oh, I don't have a pulled muscle, or I'm fine, my health is fine. but they're just interested in general health effects. We have a lot of our users that love using it for gut health, for example, like literally putting it over the stomach 10 minutes a day. Yeah. Improves the gut-brain axis and all the healthy gut bacteria, which then drives other kind of more systemic health effects. It can also be used to support sleep. So these are the kinds of applications that aren't necessarily so targeted or specific to an injury, but that you could still benefit from. There is a lot, April, and honestly, this is one of the constraints in getting this known to people, because it sounds almost like it's too much because it has so many potential applications. So
you did a great job explaining that, you know, when you talk about, well, it's for so many purposes, better sleep, gut health. I mean, that's huge. And when we talk about just such fast healing, so athletes, industrial athletes, that's what they used to call us, you know, it was a driver for FedEx. It was one of the most difficult, challenging jobs, positions that I've ever done, even outside of law enforcement, because the physical demand of it. And so being able to heal yourself in a speedy fashion to continue with those high demands is essential as well for the function of, you know, and not only that, but to save costs for corporate wise on medical care, you know, injuries, etc. So
yeah, and these are avenues that we're sort of opening up. Our typical user or customer now, and the early adopters of this product, are either in sports, like we have a lot of top athletes that are also have invested into the company, even because they really seen that this is something that helps their recovery. And of course, if you're a top athlete like a footballer or tennis player or these like performing at the highest level, then recovery is essentially the key to your performance, right? Professional athletes know this really well. So the link between improved recovery and what you can give in your everyday life is obvious. And then for a lot of people who follow these sports stars, the adoption is there. But there is a very rapidly growing segment of people who are taking health and wellness into their hands more generally, who are just more interested in ways to improve their general state of health. And I know a lot of them listen to your show as well, April, that are like not necessarily wanting to climb Mount Everest, but are looking for ways to improve their health. And we have designed something and created something to empower people to literally that you don't necessarily have to go to a doctor or to a surgeon for a certain kind of issue, that you can take care of, like you can improve your own physical ability to heal, right? Instead of going to a pill or something like this, that is usually all that we're offered in today's healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. And the functionality and the flexibility, the ease of use is really cool. I like that about the design. So bravo, great job on that. And it's really, I mean, it just makes it so much easier to invest in a product when you know that you can have it hands on at any time. And so I want to briefly go over just a little bit of that past aspect of yourself with the universe and cosmology. Do you want to share a little bit just briefly of what got you most excited about that, and what were some of your biggest aha moments outside of the red light? I know that's one of the biggest ones, but what sparked your interest so much in the other aspects of all of those studies and writing a book?
I was really interested in the question of how do we know for sure the story we tell ourselves about where the universe came from and how the universe is moving and all of it. And I was in a great sort of PhD program with extensions, and I had some amazing advisors, and I was literally paid to go do in-depth research, and I could choose a lot of different areas. But for me, the most fascinating question was just asking that almost naively of just, how do we really know? Like, what is it that we say when we say, oh, the universe started 13.8 billion light years ago, and it's moving at this speed, and this is where it's going to end up? Given what we know, how do we know that for sure? And so I started working at this, sort of trying to understand it from different perspectives, and was a little bit of an anthropologist among these scientists, because I'm not myself trained as a cosmologist. but trying to understand how they think and they do their research. And that's something I've taken with me from this generally, is a better understanding of how scientific evidence is produced, like what it means to make scientific changes, and all of this, which in the end also transfers into what I'm doing now. But for me, the fascinating question was how indistinguishable at the end of it is the sort of our myths and beliefs feed into our empirical knowledge to such a degree that I would say, like, I don't know if the Big Bang theory is true or not true, but it does require you to kind of believe in the scientific method that we have somehow nailed it, right? And the more I started looking into this and looking at the kind of evidence you need, and based on how small we are, I mean, if we're on the screen now, if you look at me, even my inner iris in my eye relative to this frame that you're looking at, this is already well beyond what we could possibly even see of other galaxies relative to the size of the universe as we think it is. We're just a tiny speck in the middle, and we have developed these amazing scientific methods to start projecting outwards from where we really know things for sure within our own solar system. But the scale of it is mind-blowing, and in order to believe that we have discovered the absolute story of like where it all began and where it's all going, I think ultimately is indistinguishable from faith. There's a certain kind of faith in the deeper science that we can leap from this tiny little area that we think we know more or less into saying this is what it is, right? So for me, that was always an interesting sort of contradiction between how obviously mythical and large and hypothetical the story is, and the ease with which the scientists working on this can say, oh yeah, that's totally established. We know that for sure, like 100%. So I've made a sort of a side gig and career through my book and debating and taking part in sort of public debates around it being a little bit of a thorn in the side of some of the standard cosmology or the more established work in this, by asking questions that they'd rather not want to answer. I don't pretend to have the answers myself, but you can think of me as a questioner of how well we really know this.
And I greatly respect and appreciate that about you. I find myself being very, very open to all sorts of possibilities. The more that we learn about just infinite possibilities, or when we observe something that it is or it changes, we put we look as far out into the universe as we can, and then we think it's the end, and then, oh, there it is, there's more, and there's always more and more and more. And so how could it be just one thing when everything seemingly is constantly changing? And so I think, again, I hold a lot of respect to you for saying something or thinking differently, thinking outside the box, because it's not a box. So
no, that's the first question. Is it a box? How big is it? What's the scale of it? Or what is it, right? And I guess one of the sort of takeaways from all those years of research and thinking a lot about this is that you cannot reach very clear empirical conclusions without somehow presuming things and making underlying assumptions, and you're kind of feeding in your own belief into your firm, precise knowledge of things. That can be a very unpopular position if you want to make it sort of a clean cut with like, hey, this is science and science knows, versus that's just myth and religion and you can think your own thing. I'm a great believer in science and the scientific method, but I believe in the limitations of it too, and that's what I find the most interesting, is where does it bleed into something that's clearly not scientific.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely fascinating, all the things that you do. So let's reel it in again. And what are you most excited about creating now? I know that, your main thing that you're concentrating on right now is Recharge Health, getting out that red light therapy to everybody. Is that the biggest thing, or is there anything else outside of that you're most excited about right now?
I mean, right now that's taking about a 1000% focus of my time. I like to think there's something else beyond this when we've gotten to a certain level, but honestly, it's what preoccupies me the most. We successfully launched this a few years ago, and we have almost 30,000 users and growing really fast with the first version. But really, we just wanted to prove that there is a market, and this is something that people will benefit from if you create a wearable red light therapy at home, I think, for people. And the innovations that we are focused on have to do with making this even better and more accessible and more intuitive, and for people to understand better what it's actually doing and how it's working. I think that's the biggest gap we now see in adoption of this kind of red light therapy. Is it's not so easy to understand at first exactly what it is, how it's working, and what it can do for you. And to be honest, April, as you know, this whole wellness and health space is also surrounded by people who make all kinds of claims about all kinds of devices and gadgets and cures and pills and all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other products on the market that will claim to do similar things that we know it can't because of physics. But so the only thing we can do is to keep building on the scientific evidence and try to develop something that will really pass the test of time, and that people can adopt, like one after the other. It's from word of mouth really that drives our growth, is that people use it, they do benefit from it, they do experience benefits, and they recommend it on to people. But it is for most people, and for maybe many of your listeners too, it is something to wrap your head around, the whole idea that light can do these kinds of things, that light can have this impact on the body. Where we started off, I think, April, is like that in itself is sort of the biggest discovery that I made through this, and that I think whether I continue with research or business development, that will be a focus for me in another decade to come, I'm sure, because I think there's a lot more to learn there and a lot more to do.
Wonderful. I'm a huge fan. And I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. So for those of you listening in, recharge.health, just type that in your browser and you will see the website. Check out those devices, check out the science that they've been continuously backing this product with, and see the reviews and grab yourself one, because you're part of those. Everybody's household needs one of these devices. It doesn't necessarily need it, but it's hugely beneficial to you. So again, recharge.health, that is also in the description. Now, Bjørn, you are doing so many things, immense amount of stress and strain on your own body physically, trying to, get this out worldwide. Share with us, what are some of the things that you are doing to help recharge and revive yourself every day?
Well, I mean, I went through in the last decade, I sort of discovered a lot of biohacking protocols and all kinds of knowledge about dieting and how to sleep better. And I've sort of adopted a lot of tips and tricks over the last decade, without identifying as a biohacker as such. But I learned a lot in the last decade. But I keep coming back to the basics that's connected to this device, is to get at least 15 to 20 minute sunshine / outside exposure every day, preferably early in the day. Even on a cold or a cloudy day, it still helps. So I think where you also started off, April, is the benefits from just being outdoor and being exposed to sunshine in the early part of the day. I find it beats a lot of other things, quite honestly. And so this guy is a concentrated version of that particular part of the spectrum that can trigger healing. But in the end, nothing beats the actual exposure of the life-giving energy source that surrounds us at all times. So get out in the sunshine and don't be afraid of the harmful effects, I think, because that's really only by overdoing it that there are any harmful effects.
Yeah. Just be smart about it.
I mean, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Really. And it's good for everyone to get some glow on the face. And skin types are different, and there are all kinds of individualized advice. But I've yet to hear anyone say you should not be out in the sunshine or you should not be outdoors. That is crazy. You can do maps of, they've done maps of infrared and how near infrared, kind of how it shows up in your urban community or around you. It's not just from the sun, it's reflected in nature. So when you're out walking in nature, you can do this infrared camera. You will see when the sun is up, the entire like parks and leaves and everything around you. If you're around greenery, it will just be a sea of infrared. It will reflect everywhere. If you're in a hardcore urban environment with only concrete, everything absorbs. There's nothing there, right? So just being in nature in a moderately lit situation is already giving you a lot of that sort of infrared energy.
1000%. And so much science and research backs that. So I love that you bring that up. I love that you're an advocate for it. It makes a whole lot of sense. And that's the whole reason why you've created this incredible device for everyone. So Bjørn, thank you so much for being an awesome guest on the Wellness Driven Live Show. You are so influential in all of the things that you are doing. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Thanks, April. It's been a great talking with you. I hope that listeners can think sort of another time around sunlight and their own relationship to light, and also the lights that we have in our homes, which is a different topic we didn't quite cover, and just think about the importance of natural life, and go check out like our device if you feel like learning more about red light therapy. I think it's really worth it. Thank you.
Yes, you're absolutely welcome. And well, let's just touch on that just briefly. A new habit that we've created in our household is to put candles on in the evening when the sun goes down, instead of having all the other lights on, or just having the lights dimmed way down low. Is there anything you want to add to that? Because I know that I do want to bring that to the audience, the importance of really those circadian rhythms that our body naturally has, and to, kind of be up when the sun is rising, go down when the sun is rising, when the earth's natural flow is going, and so shall we. So is there anything you want to add to that? So
can I ask you then, how does that feel when you made these changes? Like, how does that impact you?
Oh, it feels so good. Our bodies start to wind down more, knowing that it's time to rest. And it's just really pleasant. It feels like I'm in a spa every night, and it smells good. If you use candles that smell good. And so it's therapeutic in so many aspects. And it's one of the best things that I've changed this last year. I would have to say something new that I incorporated, a new habit that I really am enjoying.
Okay, very cool. I have something similar, and I find the sort of trying to dim things closer to bedtime, it is important. And I think the one thing that's shown the most by the science around this is to try to avoid relatively sharp, like LED lighting type thing. And now we're talking about sort of white or blue light, these kinds of sources, because that will literally like disrupt your natural rhythm. How far you dim it and how dark you want to go 1 hour or 2 hours before bedtime, that's individual taste. But to avoid things like the fridge light at night, or any of these kinds of things, like blasting light right in your face, it is an important thing to, I think, to improve your circadian rhythm.
Oh, I like it. My electric toothbrush has this awful bright light when I turn it on. So I don't know how to turn that off, but all of those little things to consider.
Yeah, and if it's relatively low power, right? If it's low power output, it's not really going to affect you that much. And there's also, I see some hysteria around like almost any lighting source and so on. Like your body your eyes can handle quite a few things. You're not going to disrupt your sleep just from having one light on or something that is not 100% red. But a lot of our indoor lighting, especially in like ceiling lights and especially in industrial areas and stuff, they've not been produced with an eye towards their impact on human health. They've been produced to have less emissions and be more energy efficient. And so there's a whole range, and I think that there's a reckoning to come for a lot of these applications that have just been rolled out everywhere, which have all kinds of, there's good reasons why we've installed them from an economic point of view, but they have an adverse effect on your health if you're exposed to it for a long time. And especially when it's dark outside. So that's something to consider.
Well, I don't know about you, but they really drain the energy out of me. So if you're, for instance, in, like you talked about, industrial or in a supermarket or what have you, they utilize those lightings, and I can feel a little more drained if I spend more time. And going back to the LEDs, I just want to touch on that briefly, because LED is such a massive craze, right? And so, everybody wants LED for this and that because they last longer or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's not necessarily the best option.
Yeah, I mean, LED is sort of a term that, it covers all kinds of lighting, right? So technically we use LED diodes in ours, but it's certain kind of wavelengths. So it's about how much power you can compress into a bulb. The difficulty with a lot of the sort of white light, bright light LEDs that are lighting people's homes or offices is that they have cut off a lot of the energy spectrum. So they only light up a particular part that then we can see that it lights up, but it actually lacks a lot of the other wavelengths that would naturally occur. And so that has an impact also on our physiology. Again, they weren't tested for their effect on the bodies. They were just tested for energy efficiency.
Like so much of what we have and consume.
And we're living through the experiment of it.
We are.
I don't mean to suggest to be like, if you are in a supermarket and it's daytime and the lights are annoying and they're ugly, but it's not, it's not going to kill you to be under those lights. We're talking about compound effects of it having generally around you, being mostly indoors, and then especially mornings and nighttime, your body is way more sensitive to light, right? So that's when, like, being a little bit more mindful or creating your own rituals around candles or low-level lighting and anything will really, I think, pay off for health.
Right, you just tone it down a little bit, and like you said, it's really, if you have smaller bulbs or what have you, then it's not as big of a deal.
No, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you being here on the show. You've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for hosting, April, and for allowing the opportunity to raise awareness around these crucial topics so we can all empower our health going forward.
It's a pleasure. And thank you so much for our audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much. Goodbye for now. And we will see you next time.